Look at your hands. Look at the skin stretching across your knuckles. It is a biological receipt. A map of where your ancient mothers and fathers walked. Have you ever wondered why it looks the way it does? You wake up when your body is ready. No alarm, no schedule. You open your eyes to a world where every single day is a negotiation with nature. For about 300,000 years, this is not hypothetical. This is the absolute reality of your lineage. Contrast that with today, where the average person spends 90% of their life indoors, shielded from the very elements that forged their physical form. The skin you wear right now was engineered for a world that no longer exists. Trace the timeline back. Go back deep into the past. Your ancestors are living within the dense, shaded forests of ancient Africa. They are covered in thick, dark hair. The hair protects them from the elements. Beneath that thick fur, their skin is actually quite pale. How do anthropologists know this specific biological fact? They look at your closest living relatives. Chimpanzees and macaques have pale skin hidden underneath their dark coats. The dense hair blocks the sun completely. The skin itself does not need to do any heavy lifting. It remains shielded and delicate. Then the environment changes drastically. The ancient climate becomes incredibly dry. The vast forests begin to shrink and vanish. The trees give way to endless open grasslands. Your ancestors are forced out of the comfortable shade. They step onto the sunbaked savannas of East Africa. The sun beats down with relentless fury. The heat shimmers constantly above the tall grass. You are now exposed. There is nowhere to hide from the massive, glowing star above you. How does a primate survive under this massive solar radiation without overheating? How do you run from predators when the air temperature is hot enough to cause a fatal heat stroke? Evolution provides a brilliant cooling system. Your ancestors develop millions of tiny sweat glands across their entire bodies. They become the most efficient sweaters in the animal kingdom. The thick fur begins to disappear to let the sweat evaporate instantly. The body becomes completely bare. You are now a hairless ape walking under the most intense sunlight on the planet. The cooling system works perfectly. You can run for miles in the heat of the day. You can exhaust your prey simply by never stopping to rest. But a terrifying new vulnerability has just been exposed. What happens when pale, bare skin meets equatorial ultraviolet radiation? The sun begins to damage the unprotected tissue. It burns the skin severely. It causes painful blisters. It invites dangerous infections that can easily kill you before you reach adulthood. The bare skin is a massive liability on the open savanna. Evolution responds to this crisis by flooding the skin cells with a microscopic pigment. It is called melanin. Melanin is a natural sunscreen built directly into your biology. It absorbs the harmful ultraviolet rays before they can penetrate deeper into your cellular structure. It acts like a physical shield against the radiation. It transforms the pale skin into a deep, protective dark brown. Most people assume this pigment evolved simply to stop skin cancer. Skin cancer is a terrifying modern disease. It claims millions of lives today. But skin cancer usually strikes people late in life. It happens long after they have raised their children. Evolution does not care about what happens to you after your reproductive years are over. Evolution only cares about your ability to create healthy offspring and pass on your genes. Why did natural selection favor dark skin so aggressively in the ancient world? What was the immediate fatal threat that melanin was actually preventing? There is a vital chemical flowing through your blood right now. It is called folate. Folate is a B vitamin that is absolutely essential for human reproduction. It builds strong, stable DNA strands. It facilitates rapid cell division. Above all, it prevents fatal birth defects in developing babies. A pregnant body needs massive, constant amounts of folate to build a healthy child. Without it, the neural tube of the embryo fails to close properly. Ultraviolet light destroys this precious chemical. The light penetrates the pale skin and literally rips the folate molecules apart as they travel through the blood vessels near the surface of the skin. This is a reproductive catastrophe. How does a species survive when the sun itself is destroying its future generations? Dark skin is the ultimate biological armor. The dense melanin blocks the intense light from reaching the bloodstream. It saves the fragile folate from being destroyed. It guarantees that healthy babies can grow even under the brutal, unforgiving equatorial sun. Every single human on Earth shared this dark skin. For hundreds of thousands of years, this was the absolute default human condition. Did you realize that white skin did not even exist for the vast majority of human history? Anthropologist Nina Jablonski dedicated her entire career to solving this precise puzzle. She works at Pennsylvania State University. She wanted to understand the exact mathematical relationship between sunlight and human biology. She and her research partner, George Chaplin, decided to map global ultraviolet radiation levels. They did not just guess. They used precise satellite data from space. They measured exactly how much radiation hits every single square inch of the Earth over the course of a year. They looked at the intensity of the light in the tropics. They looked at the fading light near the poles. They compared this incredibly detailed radiation map to the indigenous skin colors of human populations around the world. What did this massive global comparison reveal about your ancestors? The overlap was a completely perfect match. High radiation equals dark skin. Low radiation equals light skin. The math of evolution is flawlessly balanced. Your ancestors remained dark-skinned as long as they stayed near the equator. The melanin was a perfect evolutionary solution to a specific environmental problem. It was a masterpiece of biological engineering that allowed humanity to conquer the open plains. But humans are an endlessly restless species. Your ancestors started to move. They walked out of the African continent. They crossed land bridges and navigated shallow straits. They moved north into the Middle East. They pushed further north into the freezing alien landscapes of ancient Europe and Asia. The environment changed in profound, terrifying ways. The sun was no longer a deadly enemy threatening your survival. The sun became a rare and fleeting friend. The days grew incredibly short. The winters lasted for endless dark months. Thick clouds blocked the sky almost every single day. You are living in a world of frost and shadow. How does a tropical animal survive in a world composed mostly of ice? Your body has another secret, vital dependency on the sun. It is a strange and beautiful paradox. Too much ultraviolet light destroys the folate in your blood. Too little ultraviolet light creates a completely different, equally terrifying nightmare. Your skin actually uses sunlight to manufacture vitamin D. Vitamin D is not just a nutrient. It is a crucial hormone. It is the chemical key that unlocks calcium in your digestive system. Without it, your bones cannot absorb calcium from the food you eat, no matter how much you consume. Your skeleton becomes soft and weak. It literally bends under the weight of your own muscles. This terrifying condition is called rickets. It is incredibly painful for growing children. It deforms the legs, curving them outward into severe bows. It softens the ribs, making every breath a struggle. Worst of all, it crushes and narrows the pelvis. A deformed pelvis means a woman cannot give birth successfully. The baby gets trapped inside the bone structure during labor. Both the mother and the child die in agony. How does a population survive when the simple biological act of birth becomes a guaranteed death sentence? Picture a small tribe living in ancient Europe. Let us recreate a day in this frozen world. It is the middle of the brutal ice age. The wind howls endlessly across the frozen steppe. The cold penetrates deep into your bones. You are huddled inside a shelter made of giant mammoth bones and thick, heavy animal skins. The small fire provides the only light in the suffocating darkness. You wear heavy layers of animal fur simply to survive the freezing temperatures. Your body is completely covered. Only your face and hands are exposed to the elements. Weeks go by without a clear view of the sun. The pale light that does break through the clouds is weak and completely useless. The children in the tribe are growing weak and tired. Their small legs begin to bow outward under their weight. Their bones are starving for calcium in the darkness. The dark skin that protected their ancestors in Africa is now a fatal disadvantage. It acts like a highly effective, powerful biological filter. It blocks the tiny amount of sunlight that actually manages to reach the frozen earth in the dead of winter. It stops the skin from manufacturing the vital vitamin D. The perfect armor has become a deadly trap. What happens when your greatest biological defense suddenly turns against you in a new environment? Evolution steps in once again. A random genetic mutation occurs in the isolated population. It is a tiny, seemingly insignificant spelling error in the vast human genome. A specific gene called SLC24A5 mutates. This gene controls the internal production of melanin in the skin cells. The mutation simply turns the melanin factory down. The dark pigment fades. The skin becomes pale and translucent. The pale skin acts like a highly sensitive, efficient solar panel. It absorbs every available drop of weak ultraviolet light. It manufactures sufficient vitamin D even in the dimmest winter light. The children born with this pale skin survive the brutal winter. Their bones grow strong and straight. The women with pale skin develop wide, healthy pelvises. They have healthy babies when they reach adulthood. The pale skin trait slowly begins to spread through the freezing north. But here is the counterintuitive twist that changes everything you think you know about history. White skin in Europe is shockingly recent. It did not happen during the Deep Ice Age as most people logically assume. Geneticist Ian Matheson conducted a massive, groundbreaking study at the University of Pennsylvania. He wanted to find exactly when Europeans lost their dark skin. He examined the ancient DNA of dozens of early Europeans. He extracted genetic material from bones buried deep in the frozen earth. He expected to find genes for pale skin stretching back tens of thousands of years, perfectly coinciding with their arrival in the cold north. The results completely shocked the scientific community. Pale skin did not sweep across Europe until about 8,000 years ago. For tens of thousands of years, the people living in the freezing dark shadows of Europe retained their dark African skin. How did they survive the darkness for so long without changing? How did they avoid the deadly bone diseases that should have wiped them out? The answer lies in exactly what they were putting into their bodies. Before the invention of farming, your ancestors were highly successful, apex hunter-gatherers. They ate an incredibly rich, diverse diet. They consumed massive amounts of wild game. They hunted reindeer and mammoth. More importantly, they caught massive amounts of fatty fish in the icy rivers. They consumed the livers of the animals they killed. This specific diet is naturally overflowing with preformed vitamin D. They got all the vitamins they needed directly from their food sources. They did not need to manufacture it in their skin. Their rich, varied diet completely protected them from the darkness. The environmental pressure to lose their dark skin was incredibly low. They were perfectly adapted to their environment just the way they were. Scientists at the Natural History Museum in London proved this reality perfectly. They investigated the remains of a 10,000-year-old skeleton found in a cave in England. This famous skeleton is known as Cheddar Man. The scientists, including DNA researchers Ian Barnes and Selena Brace, carefully extracted ancient DNA from his inner ear bone. The petrous bone is the densest bone in the human body, perfectly preserving genetic material for millennia. The genetic sequence they decoded revealed a shocking image. It revealed a man with dark, nearly black skin and bright, piercing blue eyes. This was the true face of ancient Europe. He was a successful hunter-gatherer thriving in the northern shadows. His dark skin was not a hindrance. It was his natural heritage. Why did the skin color of the entire continent suddenly change so rapidly, in an evolutionary blink of an eye, just 8,000 years ago? Agriculture is a trap. Humans invented farming in the ancient Middle East. The concept spread rapidly across the globe. They settled down into permanent, crowded villages. They stopped tracking wild animals across the vast tundra. They stopped catching fatty fish in the freezing rivers. They traded their rich, varied diet for a predictable, monotonous one. They started eating diets consisting almost entirely of domesticated wheat and barley. Grain contains almost zero vitamin D. The dietary safety net that had protected them for tens of thousands of years vanished literally overnight. The rich food that had shielded them from the sunless winters was gone forever. Your ancient ancestors were suddenly, entirely dependent on the sun again. But they were still living under the heavy, cloudy skies of northern Europe. They were still wrapped in heavy clothing. The physical pressure to evolve pale skin skyrocketed instantly. Without dietary vitamin D, rickets began to ravage the farming communities. The children with darker skin suffered terribly. The pale mutation, which had been lingering quietly in the population, suddenly became the ultimate key to survival. It swept through the farming populations like an unstoppable wildfire. The farmers who could absorb the weak sunlight lived. The ones who could not died out. Are you surprised to learn that the simple invention of ancient bread literally changed the color of human skin? The story repeats itself across the globe. The ancestors of modern Asian populations also moved into northern, sunless latitudes. They also faced the exact same terrifying problem of dark winters and lethal vitamin D deficiency. They also transitioned to agricultural diets based on rice and millet. They also evolved light skin to survive the darkness. But nature found a completely different genetic path to solve the same problem. The specific genetic mutation that causes pale skin in Europe is entirely different from the mutation that causes pale skin in East Asia. Evolution solved the exact same environmental crisis twice, using two completely different genetic tools. It is a brilliant, undeniable example of parallel adaptation. Your skin is a living, breathing record of these ancient environmental negotiations. It is a delicate, hard-won compromise between the deadly radiation of the equator and the freezing shadows of the north. Every shade of humanity is simply a geographic marker of where your ancestors finally settled. But human migration has vastly outpaced biological evolution. Today you can step onto an airplane and completely change your environment in 12 hours. Evolution takes hundreds of generations and thousands of years to adjust to a new climate. You might be living in a zip code that completely mismatches your ancient, hardwired genetics. A person with pale skin living in sunny Australia suffers extreme sunburns and faces a constant, terrifying risk of deadly skin cancer. Their body completely lacks the dense melanin shield their ancient African ancestors perfected. They are biologically naked under a hostile sun. Conversely, a person with dark skin living in cloudy, rainy London struggles with severe, chronic vitamin D deficiency. Their powerful biological armor blocks the tiny amount of vital sunlight their body desperately needs to maintain bone density and immune function. You spend your days sitting indoors under harsh artificial lights. You stare at screens instead of the horizon. You wear thick, comfortable clothes that cover almost your entire body. You smear chemical sunscreen on your face when you finally step outside into the light. You are living in ancient biological compromise in a modern, concrete world. Your body is still silently, desperately trying to walk the tightrope between protecting your fragile folate and building your strong bones. The biological receipt stretching across your knuckles proves exactly where your ancient mothers and fathers walked.